you very much to More Space for Light. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk about empathy in the enterprise. This is something that I've been thinking about for a really long time, and I want to share with you some of the exercises that I've been using at IBM and what I've been talking about also outside of IBM for people to really take advantage of this moment and design a future that we want and what we need. Of course, I'm an employee for IBM, but these are all my opinions. These are experiments I'm running. IBM Enterprise. You know, if we were able to get a corporate spokesperson in here, I'm sure they would have an opinion that was different than mine. So this is just my opinions. Just heads up on that. And I'm trying to spark creativity. I have been with IBM a really long time, as was mentioned, 20 years. And actually, before I worked for IBM, I worked for GE. I have been involved with agile transformation, something called Model Office, and that's where they find really crazy people like myself. At IBM, we refer to those as wild ducks, to walk into a group, many times not a well-performing group, and start asking questions and to redesign the culture. And as I mentioned, at IBM, we call those wild ducks. We have pictures of wild ducks all over our collaboration spaces, and that was a hard job, right, to do that. I went on from that agile transformation area into design thinking, then into enterprise design thinking, into design sprints, which I do now. I'm enterprise design sprint person for IBM. And to make more space for light at IBM, we actually created one of the only internal agencies at IBM. That's where we could figure out new practices, run experiments, and develop our own culture for innovation. That was really important to us. Currently, I am experimenting with the IBM Garage method, and that is basically like a design sprint on steroids. Not only are people in the room together, not only is the user with you, not only is the decider with you, but you also have coders and all types of subject matter experts. So at the end, you don't just push out a concept, you actually push out something that is ready to be to see the light of the world. So that's what I'm working on right now. How does IBM empathize for meaning? Well, we do a lot of different things, and it's difficult. We are a 100-plus-year-old company. We have between 300 to 400,000 employees. So it takes a lot of work. It doesn't happen accidentally. And I would say the strength of IBM really is the rigor. The rigor. We have tremendous rigor. And we have posted numerous articles, I think in the New York Times and all over the place, that we want to be the most scale design thinking organization that exists. And to do that, we have had to develop a platform for design thinking, for enterprise design thinking, to make sure that the methods are clear. They are easy to execute. You can scale them. You can explain them. You can execute them. Everything supports design thinking. It comes together holistically. That's how you do it at a large scale. Now, what I would suggest to you is that you start thinking about design differently. As designer, we think about intent, but I think intent now, given the state of the world, the numerous problems that exist, we need to think about the needs of users, not only in giving them a product or service they need, but also holistically, how are we serving society? How are we thinking more dynamically about intent and how we're contemplating the issues and needs of users? That is different. To take this quote from Don Norman, one of the originators of design thinking, designers don't try to search for a solution until they have determined the real problem. And even then, instead of solving that problem, they stop to consider a wide range of potential solutions. Only then will they finally converge upon their proposal. This process is called design thinking. And this is back to the whole idea, the same thing I'm challenging with as far as intent. We have to think about the real problem today. The real problem actually exists in society. It exists in government. It exists in numerous areas. Problems are complex and they're only getting more difficult and challenging. We need to think differently. Our goal today is not only to increase shareholder value, It is to increase the quality of lives for the world. With great creativity comes great responsibility. And as designers, that is on us. We need to think through this. Here are the principles that IBM looks to help us. First, a focus on user outcomes, diverse and empowered teams. You cannot solve for a problem if you do not understand it. And if you don't have diverse perspectives, you're not going to be able to solve it. And in the past, when we say diverse, empowered teams, that means well-informed stakeholders, subject matter experts. But now we need to include different mindsets, different backgrounds, all different types of things to make sure that our thinking is as clear and inclusive as possible. Radical inclusion is real. You actually have to design for it, though. It doesn't happen by itself. I challenge you to do that. And what I would challenge you to do is think of it in a form of a loop. IBM has this loop here, which is restless reinvention. And because the world is changing so quickly now, we have to constantly be observing and reflecting and making, observing and reflecting and making, because everything is changing. Things are changing by the moment, right? So that is a mindset I would suggest you consider. This is our loop. As I said, we observe, reflect, and make. And if you're just observing and reflecting, then you're probably in analysis paralysis. You have to make something to make it real. And if you're just reflecting and making, you're flying blind because you're not observing. And if you're observing and making, you're taking orders. So it's very important that we consider all the aspects of design. Observe, reflect, and make. And I'm suggesting that we need to observe deeply the world we live in, and especially within the enterprise. The keys. As far as the keys, this is how we bring ideas to life within enterprise design thinking. We have hills, that is our intent, written through the lens of the user. We have playbacks with the people we're designing for, and sponsor users are the folks that we engage in those conversations. The principles guide us, the loop drives us, the keys align us. And that's how we empathize for impact, using rigor, scaled across the enterprise. So the hills are basically the way we form intent for the user. It's who, what, and when. And many times the when we also refer to as the wow. It's how we break down in specifics, what is the intent, what do we aim to deliver for the user. And so we write that out. We want to make sure that we are doing a lot of design doing, and we're converting the ideas to action. So those hills are those statements that we put together to make sure that we are absolutely executing on the goals of the user. And many times it's also a means for us to measure our success. Playbacks is the active conversation with groups, not just always the users, but sometimes it's with some of the peripheral groups, to allow for us to check our math, to make sure that we don't get in our own heads, and allows us to ensure that if we need to make modifications to design, we have time to do that. You don't want to find out you're wrong once you start building. And so a constant and frequent playbacks allow for that conversation, allows us to check our math, to iterate. Every day is a prototype. And so those playbacks are something we instill within groups to happen quite frequently, usually weekly, to have that constant dialogue. And then sponsor users, those are the people we're designing for.